What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing strange encounters with dark humanoid entities. We discuss a lot of strange and somewhat terrifying humanoid entities on this channel, but sometimes I even surprise myself with the encounters I manage to uncover. I haven't even heard about yet what I'm bringing to you all today until very recently, and I thought, since we're coming off of more translucent humanoid entity encounters, it would be the perfect time to bring these other sort of bizarre entities that most people haven't ever heard of to you all. A lot of the time when people who don't know any better or who aren't as deeply enmeshed in this community as most of us here on this channel are, come across any sort of humanoid entity, they either want to dismiss it all completely or they want to just throw it underneath the umbrella category of humanoids without really taking a long, hard look at what they're really dealing with. But sometimes it's a phenomenon that isn't so clearly defined, and therefore it doesn't fit inside any of those other categories. It really is something that I believe needs to stand out on its own in order for us to better be able to understand it, and that's why I chose to cover these type of humanoids today. It's all beyond our understanding, but to different degrees depending on your experiences, your possible abilities, and also what you're willing to believe and where you draw a hard line. Keep in mind that not everyone always knew that what we would call regular shadow beings even existed. We didn't always know about them. Think about the 1980s. It'd be like, what's a shadow being? That's a new phenomenon, right? That's a new entity. So I've also included some of those here just to show you how far we've come with that particular phenomenon and to make you all stop and think that perhaps some of the other strange, black, dark, humanoid entities here could become somewhat commonplace or at least a household name in the next decade or two. Some of them I was like, this might be shadow person phenomenon, but maybe not. So wanted to see what you all thought. And with that absolutely terrifying and horrific thought about these entities becoming commonplace, I don't have much more to say except let's jump right in. Many of the encounters with this particular type of black humanoid entity happen in the wilderness, where it's already scary enough without adding whatever the hell this thing is into the mix of it all. Our first encounter took place in Fishkill, New York at a place called Camp Tommy. Reddit user Justin F. 10,000 said he had been working as a counselor at the camp when he had a really eerie encounter with a black humanoid entity. He said he was breaking the rules and sneaking out of his cabin at night to go meet up with his girlfriend in her cabin. Everyone was supposed to be inside their own cabins and to remain there as of 10 p.m. sharp, but he had done this so many times before he had no reason to be concerned or worried about getting caught or anything else really happening to him. He was sorely mistaken, as he said about what happened and what he experienced while cutting through the forest, quote, "Suddenly, I heard rustling in the woods and stopped to investigate it. There are bears/other animals, so I was expecting something like that. This 3-foot humanoid type thing suddenly jumped out of the bushes, spooked, and looks right at me. It's too dark for me to make out any of its features other than it was standing on 2 feet, had 2 arms, and basically just looked like a miniature person without any features. Just looked solid black. If it had clothes on, I would have been able to notice that. I was really curious what it was, so I started walking towards it. And it must have gotten more spooked because it bolted back into the woods. I'll never forget how mechanical it looked as it took off running too. Its whole body basically just shifted 90 degrees, almost as if someone was doing the robot dance, and it just took off. I have never seen anything on 2 legs run that quickly, and I was pretty confused about what it was. I'm a pretty fast runner and a fit person in general, but this thing was on another whole level fast. As much as I try and make sense of it, I still to this day have no idea what the F it was. It was very human, but too short to be a human. 3 feet tall is about accurate, and I really don't know how a human could run that fast anyways. I have no freaking idea, but it's always bugged me. Maybe one day I'll go back to try and find this creature again, end quote. When I first went through this encounter, I was thinking immediately about the shadow entity phenomenon, but since when are they known to be so tiny, right? I really don't know though, and with all of my research that I put into the book and now these encounters, I wonder if there is perhaps some sort of subcategory to that particular phenomenon we just haven't been able to narrow down yet. However, and on the other hand, most people nowadays are familiar with that phenomenon, and he didn't mention it at all. This thing was minuscule and superhumanly fast. Could it have been some sort of demon? Again, because of my extensive research into and knowledge of demons, I honestly don't think that's the case either. To me, at least, this sounds like some sort of forest spirit who just happened to be at the same place as our witness was at the exact same time. These things are usually a bit darker in spirit than most of the other entities we find out there, and I certainly would not want to mess with one myself. He's lucky he didn't chase it down, in my opinion. Not that he would have been able to catch it anyway, not really. And even if he came close, it would have more than likely just disappeared itself, made itself disappear. Can I be 100% sure, though, that that's what this thing was? No. If you have any knowledge or opinions, let me know in the comments below the video, please. Thanks. Our next encounter also comes from a Reddit user, and this one goes by the name AMPWRS. He said they had a very bizarre experience after riding his 4x4 truck around and throughout a wooded area with a friend one dark and lonely night. This happened in Alabama, and the witness said he ran out of gas, and he and his friend ended up having to push the truck out of the woods and to a secluded parking area nearby. Once they did that, they decided to take a little break, catch their breath, think about what to do next. As they did so, however, they saw something they couldn't explain, and that stuck with them forever afterwards. So there was one security light that was on in the entire parking area, and when our witness and his friend looked up and into its beam, that's when they saw it. He said of the experience, quote, "Standing there no more than 10 feet in front of us and directly in clear view under the security light was a horrible creature. I froze up and just remained as silent as I could. Then my buddy screamed out loudly. That's when this thing noticed us and jumped, turning in our direction. It immediately ran off in an awkward, lanky fashion and ducked behind a tree. It then peeked around the tree back toward us, then sprinted off towards the woods where it disappeared. That's when I said, 'Did you see that?' My friend immediately described exactly what it was that I had just witnessed, down to all of the details. A solid black bipedal creature with shiny, tight skin. It had an elongated head and no face. It did have facial bone structure, but no orifices, no mouth, no nostrils, and no eyes. You could see every bone in its body, and it was slightly hunched. It had long, dangling, pointy fingers." End quote. So wow, that is terrifying, and there's really no chance in all hell that it's a shadow entity. They could see its bones, but there was nothing to the face. Once again, though, we have very quick running and sheer awkwardness of this thing. This one did seem a little more curious as it peeked around a tree, but I wonder now, is it that these things aren't supposed to be being seen by us humans and have to answer to some sort of higher authority when they're accidentally spotted? Are they from a place where they're taught to fear humans? It definitely sounded terrifying by its description, but so far there is nothing to tell us that it has evil or malicious intentions with humanity, and actually it seems kind of like the exact opposite. I feel like these things are most likely around all of the time, but since they literally blend in with the night, then when they're spotted, it's a big shock to them and they have to immediately get the heck out of there. It's all so strange and confusing though, because what in the world could look that terrifying besides some sort of interdimensional being? If that's in fact what this one was, and I thoroughly do believe that that's the case, then we'll never be able to fully understand the entity in general or why it's here in the first place, unless we understand the dimension or realm it came from, which as of right now, 2023, is quite impossible as far as I know. Either way, that's really scary, especially for someone who doesn't have everyday access to those other realms and worlds. I didn't get the feeling so far with these two encounters that it's extraterrestrial, and while in both cases so far the entity is definitely solid black and humanoid, I feel like there are enough differences that we can easily say there are more than likely two separate entities in these two separate encounters. It's not like they both came across the same thing. Or are they the same type of being, but a different species? I doubt that very much, because most forest spirits won't ever be found hanging out in a parking lot, not under any circumstances, and in fact, they don't usually ever leave the forest at all. Not all of the encounters with creatures like these ones happen out in the middle of nowhere either. Our next witness said he had his encounter when he was on active duty as a soldier with the United States Army. He was at Fort Sill in Lawton, Oklahoma, which is a 94,000-acre sprawling area of land that is mostly wide open from what I understand. He was doing some training, and his job that night consisted of what he referred to as a very boring job, in which he called fire watch duty. He said on that night in particular, it would definitely be more interesting because of the encounter he had had with a black humanoid creature. I'll let him tell the rest. He said, quote, "One Saturday, I had fire watch. Not a big deal. I decided I'd chill in my room for most of it and make myself be seen every now and then. We had a gym below the main floor. We would spend a lot of time in that gym. Firewatch was sometimes tasked with cleaning it up. There was a small walled-off section, though, and it used to contain an electric chair. I'm still unsure on the history of the building we were at, but it was next to a large cemetery. We would hear the occasional creepy story about the building and the electric chair. Anyway, I digress. That night, I was asked to clean the gym and then to mop the third deck. At the time, no one lived on third deck. My buddy and I cleaned the gym, then walked up the stairs to mop. He mopped from the end to the middle, and I proceeded to mop the rest of the way to the stairs. We finished mopping, and my friend went to go skate in his room while I told Judy we were done. I walked back up the stairs to grab the mop bucket. I got there and realized someone had walked all over the floor that we just mopped. So I looked down the hallway. When I did, I saw a human-like figure, except it was black. The blackest black I have ever seen. I felt this wave of uncertainty and fear wash over me, something I had never felt before. I sprinted down the stairs and ran to my room, waking my roommate up. He thought I was messing with him when I told him what happened. After that, I never saw the figure again while I was there. It was honestly one of the most disturbing experiences of my life, end quote. I really wish we had more details as to what exactly this soldier had seen to make him so fearful, as they aren't really known for being fearful in general. It does sound to me like, at least in this case, he was dealing with an actual shadow entity, but I honestly can't say because I don't know how tall it was or anything else about it. It made him feel fear, which makes me wonder if that's the overwhelming evil and malevolence that comes with most encounters of those beings. But then again, it left footprints, which I'm not sure a shadow person would do or really would be able to do. I got to thinking about the building and the fact that there was a cemetery right next to it and most likely on the property itself. I got to thinking about the building and the fact that there was a cemetery right next to it and most likely on the property itself. And the fact that people had most likely been electrocuted there. And that makes me believe even more that this more than likely was an encounter with a regular, as we've come to know them, shadow entity. Either way, it sounds terrifying, and the footprints it left behind, when I read that, I got the absolute chills. Those types of places are where shadow people thrive, or so it seems, and so I'm confident in my assessment, meaning places where people are killed, places where evil lurks, like in cemeteries, things like that. However, if you know or think any different, as always, feel free to let me know in the comments. How much more terrifying, though, when the entity shows up in your home, or worse, your own bedroom. That's what happened to our next witness, who lived in Connecticut at the time and said he woke up to one in his room and it terrified him immediately. I got this one from Your Ghost Stories, and it allegedly happened in 2008, before the shadow person phenomenon really started being mainstream like it is today. That isn't to say people didn't experience them, but most people just chalked it up to something evil and strange, and those were things we really didn't discuss publicly until very recently. Especially if it was something that no one else had been reporting seeing at the time. I'll once again just let the witness do the talking, as he said, quote, "A few seconds after waking, I felt the sensation of something gripping my heart and squeezing it to the point where it was painful. For me to admit pain, actual pain, with what I've gone through in terms of getting hurt playing sports, means that it was really something bad. Also, I don't wake up at those hours of the morning anymore without a reason I'm aware of, a dream, having to go to the bathroom, or something along those lines. When I woke up from this, there was no immediate cause that I can remember that forced me to wake up. All I remember is waking up. In the corner of my bedroom, there was a black shadow, darker than my room, that appeared to be humanoid, but somehow didn't really have a shape. I never looked directly at it, but only looked at it out of the corner of my eye, which is unusual because I always look at unusual objects/things. I do remember it seeming to reach out toward me at one point. All I did was curl up into a ball and started praying. A minute or two after I started praying, I felt the pressure in my chest release, and with it came a profound calmness I've never felt before, and I've managed to maintain a piece of that calmness ever since. My house is not haunted, nobody has ever died in it, and there's no ancient Indian graveyard underneath it. I have no explanation for what happened," end quote. Even though I'm 100% convinced that this is just a case of someone having a bout of sleep paralysis in a time before we even knew what that term meant, and also Despite my wholeheartedly believing that this was your average shadow person encounter, imagine how terrifying that must have been for someone in 2008 who had no knowledge of the entities or the phenomenon like we have now. There was no research. Nobody was talking about it. For the millions of people that were experiencing it every year and often, some every night and some still are, we had no outlet and we had almost no information. Our next witness is also a Reddit user, and I love his name, HH and Holmes, and he said that he and several people he knew had many sightings of black humanoid entities around where they lived, which he only said was in the United States. He said about all of it, quote, "In most of the cases, we all witnessed the same style of humanoid, around 3.5 to 4 feet tall and pitch black, meaning that no features were ever even seen on the things. They would walk/run extremely fast and were only seen at nighttime, sometimes even passing through the street lights, yet their bodies got no lighter than when they were in the dark. They were always pitch black. They were always spotted all in the same 2 blocks of each other, mostly standing around in alleys, once sitting in a tree, on someone's front porch, and even in someone's bedroom. The most seen together was only 2, meaning that they mostly traveled alone. Most of them seemed to simply be watching. There was one incident where the being was slightly different. It was probably 1.5 feet taller, but hunched over and could drop on all 4s and sprint away faster than any animal or person I had ever seen," end quote. Guys, this one case has many of the elements of the first 2 that we discussed here, but it seems like it was all across different encounters. What I mean by that is the hunched figure that was a little taller, like in the second encounter, and also he mentioned streetlights, which I don't find to be a coincidence because, I'll say it again, I don't believe coincidences are a thing. Nope, not a thing. I don't believe it. Also, the size of them and the fact that they ran super quickly, but again, without more details, I have no way of knowing what we're dealing with. If I may posit a theory, though, I will say that all of the encounters with the smaller humanoid shadow creatures, it reminds me of cloaking. Not as in Glimmerman or translucent humanoids, but this is the way I see both spiritual and extraterrestrial trickster entities. They almost look to me like a very tiny toddler who took a black sheet instead of a white one and put it over their bodies, covering them completely in order to be a ghost or something like that. Now, there is one little detail in that the witnesses describe seeing limbs, but like I said, it's just a theory. I'm not saying I found the answer. It is interesting, though. The second encounter terrifies me the most because of the shiny skin and blank orifices. They're unlike anything I've ever come across before, but that could also be cloaking or presenting, as I sometimes call it, when an entity who has been spotted but doesn't want me to know what it is will quickly try to appear as something else. So, a scared spirit or ghost wanting me to think it's an evil demon and presenting itself as a gigantic, grotesque creature, when really I can, if I look hard enough and know what to look for, I can see that it's just an entity that is afraid of me, of what I'm doing in its area, in its vicinity, so it's trying to scare me away. That's kind of what presenting is, in my experience and in my opinion. To a normal human being who doesn't possess the knowledge or skill set that someone like me does, it can be very confusing, extremely traumatizing, and downright bizarre, as you can all see here. Do any of you have any explanations, besides it being regular shadow beings as we have come to know them, that make any sense yet here? I am so very, very curious to see what you all have to say in the comments, and to one another in the premiere as well. As I always say, though most of the encounters I bring to you all here do take place in the United States, none of this is solely an American issue or phenomenon, and other countries report these types of things just as much, and depending on what we're discussing at any given time, sometimes even more so. Reddit user is no good said he had his experience while living in Germany in 2003 in a very small and rural village. He was coming back from church of all places, and here is what he said of the whole bizarre ordeal. Quote, "In a side street under a lighted street lamp stood this thing. It was completely black, had no face and no clothes, was very tall, like about 2 meters, and the creature's arms reached below its knees. It just stood there in silence, and as I saw it and realized that it can't be a human, I was frozen to fear and couldn't stop looking at it till it made a step in my direction. At that moment, I ran like hell to the house of my parents without turning around. It didn't get me or something, but I was in extreme fear. I never talked to anyone about this because I feared that people might laugh about me. but I saw it and it still haunts my thoughts now and then. Fortunately, I've never seen it again. In summary, the thing was completely black. It had no details. There was no face, no colors, no nose shape, no eyes. It had normal proportions except the knee-long arms. It was very thin and approximately 2 meters tall. It made no sound, and I have the feeling that it was a he, end quote. So, what I didn't know before this and had to look up, I at least didn't know it off the top of my head, is that approximately 2 meters tall is approximately 6'5", 6.5 feet tall, which in my opinion, being 5'6", is very tall. It's still shorter than most regular shadow beings are said to be, but it's by far the tallest entity we've seen here so far as we were told anyways. It's a little bizarre to me that we have the mention of it standing or being seen under a street light again too. I don't know what the connection is, but I'm sure there is one. There's one there somewhere. Also, the knee to arm ratio being so long reminds me of some sort of cryptid and of how Bigfoot is often described. I really don't know what to make of this one, guys. It stepped toward him, which some shadow beings are sometimes known to do, and that's usually to initiate and amp up the fear in the human being who just happened to be unlucky enough to see it, and that's more than likely because that's what they feed on. I take that as fact. Shadow beings and so many other entities across the board do, in fact, feed on our fear. The fact that he said he got the feeling that the entity was male doesn't surprise me, as most of the time with shadow beings that is the case. But I think it's just because they are completely masculine energy and don't have a feminine balance. So even the ones we would call female are not feminine. Our femininity and masculinity as humans all come from the divine, but in dealing with entities and creatures from other times, planets, places, dimensions, and or realms, that just isn't the case for the most part. I said for the most part, so come for me if y'all want to, but please understand my words first. I believe this was more than likely a regular shadow being, or perhaps several, who all formed into one in order to scare this gentleman more so than he already was, because they somehow understood he was leaving. They had to ramp the fear up really fast, gather all the energy, feed, and then move on. I don't know though. After all, hanging around back alleys and other places that are normally of ill repute, think about the types of people one would find there, right? Maybe the shadow people we see are several combined to make one in order to make us more fearful, and they're all really only a few feet tall. I mean, I know I'm reaching here, guys, but the low hanging arms has me thinking that perhaps there was something extra to this particular being, both literally and figuratively, of course. Here is another witness from Your Ghost Stories who lives in the Philippines and at the time lived with 2 housemates at an apartment near the college or university they all attended together. She reported that they were downright menaced by all of this. I did just a tiny bit of editing to this one, guys, because I felt like I had to, or it would have remained impossible to follow and understand. Forgive me. Quote, one afternoon at around 4 or 5, one of our housemates, who was also my classmate and batchmate, was eating her dinner while I was sitting in the middle of the living room facing the mirror, and my sister was in the living room watching television. So, as the area is an open space and is just divided by some sort of study table or chairs, I can't remember the divider we used, all 3 of us are basically within the same room and can clearly see each other. After a while, I saw a tall, dark figure sort of peeping at us from the kitchen sink area. There's a thick supporting foundation just before the sink, L-shaped area, and there was this tall, dark thing hiding by it. I can see its face, hair, one arm and left leg and foot, but the other parts are not visible as it seems to be hiding, like when a kid is shy but is still curious to see something kind of pose. So it took me a few seconds before I was able to talk because my mind can't comprehend what I'm seeing, so my immediate question was, is there anyone at the sink? Which I know is quite odd and impossible, as I know there are only 3 of us. My housemate, being a scaredy cat, suddenly stood up looking at me in disbelief, asking me to stop teasing her, but I told her that there is something by the column going to the sink looking at us. My sister then said there are only 3 of us in the house right now, and it can be a burglar, as we are just on the 2nd floor of the entire apartment building. But I told them it's not possible, as the exit staircase is no longer there due to weather and rusting. I also told them that it's not a person based on what I see. They then asked me what I saw, and I told them that aside from the whites of the eyeballs, everything was just all black. I told him it was black as charcoal and the hair is like that of an afro and that it's almost as tall as the ceiling. It stayed there for a good 2 to 3 minutes as if it was observing someone or something from the house. My guess is that it was looking at the TV as it was the direction of its gaze before it just disappeared. I think all the hairs on my body were standing up during the entire time I was seeing this thing, and then everything went back to normal as soon as it disappeared. The funny thing is, I think my sister and our housemate were even more afraid of the thing than I was, even though I was the only one that could see it. I didn't feel any scary aura coming from it. I guess my goosebumps were just due to the fact that I didn't know what I was seeing and couldn't believe what I was seeing. And more than 10 years from that event, I still don't know what that tall, dark thing was, end quote. Okay, this one is extremely bizarre for a number of reasons. At first, I was thinking that it was the typical experience of someone who sees a shadow entity while they're awake, but then I kept reading and was kind of blown away. The thing had whites where the eyeballs should have been, and that was all she could see as far as anything that wasn't all black. She noticed it had what she thought was hair in an afro style, and that too is highly unusual. This sounds to me like more backwards cloaking technology that needs a little bit of help as far as like a tune-up. This was, in my opinion, perhaps a human being or some sort of humanoid entity who again was masquerading as a shadow person or something that it isn't in order to do whatever it meant and intended to do while in those girls' homes. I am blown away, and wonder if maybe this is the first glimpse of catching time travelers in action in the 21st century. No. Not being facetious. I really am curious, guys. Like, sincerely. I know you all have to have some ideas, and I hope you do about this one in particular because, like I said, I am dying to see what you guys have come up with. So, if we look at each encounter separately, it looks like we're dealing with all different entities completely. Aside from the guy who saw one in the corner of his bedroom, who I am 100% positive was experiencing sleep paralysis, and the ever-accompanying shadow person, I don't know what to make of any of this. I think we have extraterrestrials and other types of cloaking besides the usual and often discussed translucent type. I think we have something from another dimension or realm that was here for whatever reason and didn't expect to be seen. I also believe we have a time-traveling human or entity who looked very human and so many other things that many of these could have been. I do believe that some of them are connected, though, and if not to one another, then at least to the shadow entity phenomenon that has become sort of a craze nowadays. I try to only present the encounters and information to you guys as I receive it, but I know I add a lot of my own opinions, and I hope that doesn't influence what you guys are thinking and feeling about all of it. It really is more about intuition than anything else, and in some cases, there just isn't enough information to form any sort of opinion one way or another. In those cases, I like to use all of my knowledge I have on a particular subject and also take what I'm feeling intuitively and try to find explanations I can at the very least live with until I uncover more. So, what do you guys think? That's all I have for you today. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed hanging out with each other, if you came to the premiere. Please spread the love by sharing this video. All right, guys, let's get that sub count up. Yeah. Subscribe if you haven't already and make sure your notification bell is on, okay? Check out the description box for some important links, ways to donate to the channel, PayPal, Patreon, Cash App, or my Amazon wish list gift link if you want to just send me a gift. My books, Missing the Faith Theory, Encounter with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, and Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond, Kindle and paperback versions from Amazon. The links are also in the description box. Please join us on Wednesday nights from 7-ish p.m. Eastern Time until we really have no one to read for, or 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself and Ghost Dragon ZW, I channel your team, bring it in, draw one random card from one random deck, and tell you what your next week or two is going to be like. Best chat on the internet. Don't believe me? Come on in and check it out. Every other Thursday, you have Chillax and Chat with myself, Ghost Dragon ZW, and Miss Paranormal Pixie, Miss Lara. And on the Thursdays in between, you will have conversations with Lara, the Paranormal Pixie Hour at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here. Friday nights, we have at midnight Eastern Time, Midnight Vibes, Chillaxing with the Ghost Dragon. Come on in and check out all those live stream, guys. They really do help to support me, support us, support what I'm trying to do here. Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time is when I do the pre-recorded uploads, which is what this is. On the Monday you are watching this at noon Eastern time, it's afternoon talk with myself and Ghost Dragons, where we just talk about basic things and stuff. On the Monday you are watching this as well at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 9 Central, I am going to be on the Paranormal 60 podcast, and I'm going to leave that link in the description box. This is major. I am totally fangirling. Dave Schrader from Hold Your Files and so many other spectacular shows is interviewing me, and I cannot even believe it. Don't forget, TMP Press coloring book with a picture of your girl. You are going to win something awesome if you purchase this, color it, and I'll even sign it for you and send it back. But I've got some amazing prizes. Nobody's contacted me yet. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't want to color me. Don't forget as well, guys, I'm looking for merch designs because I'm hooking up with Arisha over at Jive Creations. She is the owner, creator, and operator of Jive Creations. She and I are hooking up to do some merch, and she has all these great ideas, and I have like, I want a gemstone and maybe a picture of myself. Like, I don't have an imagination like that. If you know anything about digital art, or if you just know how to draw really well and want to give me the design to use on merch, let me know. Otherwise, she and I are just going to work on it and come up with something. So merch coming soon. Done by Jive Creations, which is absolutely amazing. The link for Jive Creations will also be in the description box. Please check it out. Support Arisha, Lotus Girl Tennille's sister. She stands on her own. It's just we know Lotus Girl a little bit better. We're getting to know Arisha. She is fantastic, amazing light worker, just like her twin sister, Miss Lotus Girl. Issues 5 and 6 of the Paranormal Press magazine, I wrote articles, so I will try to leave the link for that in the description box, but I'm not sure if I have that link. But go to tmppress.com and you can order them. I will sign them for you if you want to do that, if you want to purchase one that's autographed or whatever. And also, one last thing, for the entire month of June, I am doing half price general personal intuitive oracle readings, $20 a pop, paid to my PayPal or Cash App, so hit me up about that. Anything, any kind of correspondence, anything you may need, questions you may have, especially about the video chat sessions that I do, the blessings boxes, the spiritual helper boxes, my homemade creations, okay, metaphysical manifestation sprays. They're actually like metaphysical boxes. They have all kinds of crystals. I custom design them for what you are needing most in your life. Usually if you purchase 6 weeks of sessions with me, a giant gift box comes with it with everything you're going to need to complete the tasks at hand and the work we are doing. I've had nothing but good reviews so far. With all that being said, be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Never accept anything less than others being kind to you. And always be kind to yourselves as well. Never let anyone make you feel less than, belittle you, devalue you, dehumanize you. You are incredible, amazing. Abundance is your birthright as a human being. If nobody told you today, you are beautiful, you are incredible, you are perfectly made and inhumanly perfect. I believe in you. If you need anything from me, I don't care what it is, don't hesitate to hit me up at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Us lightworkers, empaths, people with special extrasensory abilities need to be there for each other. It's not a good time for us with the sleepers taking over and how the collective consciousness is right now. We have to try and shift it together. And the only way we can do that is by sticking together, okay? Joining at our heart centers. With all that being said, always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.